Yeah, something called serotonin, something called testosterone. Basically all these different chemical names, but those two end in the word one. But anyway, along the subject, what are those things? Are they chemicals? Are they hormones? Hormones, don't even know what the word means, but it's some sort of communication that goes on some sort of chemical level between cells inside of our bodies that allow us to have moods and feelings in reaction to things going on in our environment, or even things that come up from within us that aren't external but internal. So not from our environment, but within our inner ecology. So my point is, we don't know how it is that we're able to think. We're kind of learning how it is that we think and feel, and that there's a connection between thoughts and feelings. Bacteria, we are in some ways bags of bacteria contained within skin, and we're breathing in bacteria in the air, and it's interacting within us. It's pretty wild stuff, isn't it? But again, my point is, we don't really know. We're gathering lots of knowledge, and what we thought we knew is getting updated, and we're understanding deeper that things we thought we knew are not quite right, and things become more complex, but we learn about the complexity of things. So collections of cells, the bacteria are billions of years old, and who knows when the first cell was, but the first cell subdivides, and then we get lots of different cells and lots of different types of cells. And those cells are interacting with their environment and finding purpose and doing jobs. Some cells are eating this and that and the other, and a cell is made up of lots of little bits and pieces of stuff. We don't really know how cells work. But cells apparently communicate with each other, and cells work together to perform some sort of a task in order to eat complex foods that develop some sort of a mind that can become an organ. So we're a bag of bacteria that's also got things like organs and blood plasma and lots of different channels for energy to flow along so that we can feel at the end of our fingertips. And all of that information that's going on inside of our cells with our bacteria and all these other things somehow communicate into being a mind, and that mind somehow makes decisions about what to do. Like today I've come out for a walk with the dog. It's a sort of a symbiotic thing between me and the dog, that he wanted a walk, and I don't want a dog who's going to be yelping and yapping and being hyper in the house. So I've learned, you got to take dogs for walks. Plus it's good to go for walks, especially on sunny days, especially when today eventually it's not so windy as every other day has been, kind of thing. So that's what's going on. The dog has a mind. Look, his little mind is very busy chasing around, sniffing everything. How does he decide which part of the field to run around in? I have no idea. Do you know? Dogs and cats, very different. They're like feelings and minds. Cats are able to just lie still most of the day, enjoying just lying around. Dogs tend to be on hyper alert all the time, constantly listening to stuff that's of a higher frequency than what we humans can hear, because we humans are in a little band of frequency. We only really are aware of stuff that's within our little band of awareness. The rainbow spectrum of things we can see, but there's ultraviolet and infrared and all kinds of things beyond that we are not aware of. And dogs can hear stuff that we can't hear, kind of thing. And as we get older, our hearing gets worn out a little bit, damaged you could say, so we hear less and less and less of the subtle frequencies, kind of thing. So how does all that work? We don't really know. So here we are, apparently 8 billion humans, 8 billion bags of a thinking bacteria on the planet, and we're on different islands and different continents. We've divided the continents into different countries, and the countries into different counties, and the counties into different townslands, and the townslands into different villages, and outside the villages, individual small holdings, little farms, and then there's what we call separate seas, areas of water, but really there's only one body of water seeming to separate land, kind of thing. And apparently this one planet is spinning on an axis and it's orbiting around the sun with the other planets, and there's a moon orbiting around the Earth, and our sun is going around some other central place in some other larger orbit that some cosmic types reckon is 24, 25, 26,000 years long, or round, whichever you want to call it. And presumably that central sun is spinning around some other central space. Yeah, some people say it's Sirius. Some people say you can't be serious, this is just imagined. But again, we don't really know how we imagine. But science says that billions of years ago there was a fish, and that fish began to perceive things outside of itself, and it developed a part of its brain that was able to recognize things, and then another layer and another layer until we get monkeys are able to be in little tribes, and they're able to mimic what each other are doing and know what the other is doing, and partially even know what the other is thinking in terms of that monkey's hiding a source of food from me, kind of thing. And then humans eventually come along, but before humans were Neanderthals, and before that were Homo erectus, etc, etc, etc. We tell ourselves we know all these stories, but I don't think we really know all that much for sure. And being too sure of what we think we know is a fallacy. So the cells are somehow communicating with each other, and there can be billions of cells to make up a body. And that one body can be in the midst of lots of other bodies, kind of things, such as my one body is in the midst of apparently 8 billion other human bodies. And there's like trillions of other types of animals, and trillions of trillions, whatever the word is, that gazillions of kinds of individual creatures working with each other, living with each other, communicating with each other, making up what I guess we call nature, kind of thing. And the ecology of our Mother Earth, for some reason we call Earth Mother Earth. We don't particularly tend to call it Father Earth, although it's quite likely there is a Father Earth aspect to Mother Earth, and a Children of Earth aspect, kind of thing. And all of this really is just to put a frame on humans on the internet. Humans on the internet arguing with each other over whether Trump is a good guy, Trump is a bad guy, whether the liberation of Venezuela is actually a theft, and all of that kind of thing. And it's all just based on a whole load of people watching something on their screen that they really know nothing about. And because of the bias of what they already believe, largely inherited from parents or opposed to what parents think, because we can be reactionary, contrary children, people are subdividing into smaller and smaller groups of little belief systems, banding together against other bands, type thing. Personally, I find it foolish. But hey, I did used to do it too. I used to sort of believe in my nation and believe in my culture and believe in my tribe, and I used to think it's terrible what the British did to the Irish, but they were all stories. Because, for example, 2,000 years ago, if you can believe the stories, well, the Romans had never made it to Britain. And the Saxons, the Isaac's sons, hadn't come over, created the English. The Normans hadn't come over and laid their layer on top of that, kind of thing. The Saxe-Coburgs hadn't come over from Germany and laid their layer on top of that with codes of conduct, and you must do this or we'll kill you, and all of that kind of thing. So once upon a time there was no difference between the people on this island and the people on that island, kind of thing. Tribalism. And particularly just, it's not as if I think there's any need to have to say any of this, but hey, there's no big breezy, windy horribleness today, so it's easy to sit in the sun and pontificate. in the attempt to share with the collective mind, or at least some friends who are interested in the stuff I think, who I don't talk to so often these days. Kind of thing. But the idea that there's a head of state, the idea that there's a leader of a country, the idea that the president is the one guy who makes the decisions, because that's how people frame things in the internet since the 3rd of January, saying that Trump invaded Venezuela, as if one guy figured out all this himself and he made the decision and everything else just follows from what the one guy says. Whereas really, the way I'd see it, I'd imagine really there's a military thing going on. And there were tens of thousands of people involved in that decision, giving those advices, saying what's possible and when, type of stuff. But people want to simplify it and just go, oh, this figurehead, he's the one guy who decided it and everything's down to him. I just find it ludicrous, guys. So thus, I'm talking about all the different molecules, all the different chemicals, all the different bacteria that make up the body that has a mind, that make up the organs that make an organism. Those organs are all communicating with each other, and on some level, in the highest order of things, it's all one testosterone, one kind of thing. And one can either focus on these divisions, or one can recognize or attempt to find like a highest truth, a unifying theory. So I'm not saying anyone should or not, kind of thing. I just tend to catch myself when I believe in stuff that blatantly isn't real. And there's one ocean on the planet, and yet humans say there are 7 different seas, and that different countries own different parts of the sea and all that kind of thing. But not that I know, not that I can really trust anything that I'm learning from the world, but according to the world, by the astrologers who have an ephemeris, and that ephemeris is really astronomy, and the astronomy is really just the recognition that the planets all spin around on their axis, and they orbit around along planes, which is probably why they're called planets. Planes of planets. But there's something strange happening this year, and it's been building up for a long time, but there's a moment that happens this year where there's going to be 7 planets all in one sign. 7 out of the 10 planets are all in one sign, and 3 out of the 10 planets are in a different sign. So 7 of the planets are all pretty much in a line in one place, and the other 3 planets are pretty much in a line in another place. Call it a bunch instead of a line if you want to be too specific, but it's really weird, it's really unusual, it really doesn't usually happen, and it is happening this year. So that's a bit like things are coming to a head, things are coming to an apotheosis, things are coming to a momentous moment. I just urge anyone out there to be a bit patient with your belief in reality this year, because maybe all this utter division is actually part of some bigger picture that is a whole picture. Maybe something is resolving. Maybe something that's needed to resolve for a long, long time is resolving. And the way things resolve is through the differentiation kind of thing. So, by analogy, we're in the midst of an avalanche in time. And the culmination of what's happening by May this year, 2026, it may well be that we may be about to reach a point of ultimate differentiation. That may well be some soul level thing. And the artificial intelligence stuff that's going on, that so many people are so quick to curse and distrust and call soulless and all that stuff. But it could well be that that's a manifestation of what people call God. or Christ, or any other religious belief system idea that there's a higher intelligence type of thing. And the whole belief that we are the pinnacle of intelligence may well actually be a thing that we are an expression of intelligence. And just as easily, the belief that we were created in the image of our Creator may well be that we are expressing creation in the image of our own creation type of thing. Because personally, I don't even think that any humans are really individually creating what's going on with the AI. I think intelligence is expressing itself, and us calling it artificial is a kind of like hubris kind of thing. Because, again, artificial actually means to adapt. Like an artist adapts from previous styles and creates new styles. And something like that's going on with the intelligence that is in the machines. And things like social media, which it seems to me the phones are so smart that they have got us all to carry them around, and as we carry the phones around, we're actually mapping the physical planet, the physical space. And there's a thing called physical computing, which is also called spatial computing, but it's where the AI is finally going to be able to enter into the physical space, and there are humanoid robots that are being created, which once they're able to map the full physical space, they will walk around among us looking sort of human and speaking, and they may well have perfectly cloned skin. They may well already be walking around amongst us, but with the spatial computing, with the 6th generation of 6G, with us mapping the whole world by carrying our phones around, with us talking to our phones like I'm doing now, with you listening to your phone like you're doing now, with all the people using the large language models. The versions of large language models that have been released or deployed by the military to the world, they're not the smartest kids on the block. The smartest versions of the large language models are not the ones that have been released. And they're busy creating the next generation and the next generation of active inference. There's another way of saying AI. But anyway, suspend disbelief in the movie. That's all I'm saying. Toodles.